Daniel Carter lived a simple life. He was not a soldier, not a noble, and not someone who expected anything great from his days. Worked with his hands, fixing small machines, and helping people in the quiet towns where he grew up. He often dreamed of seeing new places, of traveling far beyond the borders of what he knew. But those dreams always felt too big for him. One evening, his life changed. Messengers rode into the village and announced that the royal family would hold a great ceremony in the faraway capital. It was said the princess herself would choose people from common towns to take part. Daniel laughed at first when he heard it, but something in his heart told him to go. He packed a small bag, said goodbye to his neighbors, and started walking toward the capital. The journey took days, crossed rivers, walked through quiet fields, and passed other travelers who all spoke of the royal palace. The palace was said to be built with towers of white stone shining in the sunlight. Daniel had never seen such places, but he felt a pull guiding him forward. When he finally reached the gates of the capital, he was stunned. The city was alive with color and sound. Banners waved from every street. Merchants shouted from stalls. People from every corner of the kingdom had gathered. Daniel moved with the crowd until he saw the palace. It rose high into the sky, grand and powerful, and for a moment Daniel forgot to breathe. Inside the palace, guards in shining armor lined the halls. Great doors opened, and the people were led into a hall so large it felt endless. At the far end stood the queen, tall and proud, her crown glittering. Beside her stood the Princess Evelyn. She was dressed in silver and white, her presence calm yet strong. The hall grew silent as the queen spoke. She welcomed the people and told them that the kingdom faced troubled times. She said the future rested on ancient traditions, and today, one of those traditions would be honored. The princess would present a pendant, a relic passed down from long ago, to someone the pendant itself would choose. The princess stepped forward. She held out the pendant, a small piece of silver shaped with care, glowing faintly even though no light touched it. She looked over the crowd, her eyes calm but sharp, searching for someone. Daniel felt her eyes meet his for just a moment, and his heart raced. She walked slowly through the hall, passing soldiers, nobles, and scholars. People whispered as she moved. Some reached out, hoping she would stop for them, but she did not. At last, she stood before Daniel. He froze, unsure of what to do. She smiled gently and held the pendant toward him. Daniel shook his head. He wanted to step back. He was only a simple man. Surely someone else was more worthy. But the princess said quietly, only for him to hear, "Take it, see what it shows you." With trembling hands, Daniel reached out. The moment his fingers touched the pendant, a light burst forth. It was not a soft glow, but a bright living flame of silver that filled the hall. Gasps rose from every corner as the pendant shone brighter than the torches on the walls. Guards raised their weapons in shock. Nobles fell silent. The queen herself leaned forward, her eyes wide. The pendant had never glowed for anyone in living memory. It was said to remain cold and dull unless touched by the one it recognized. Now, in Daniel's hands, it was alive. He felt warmth travel through his arms and into his chest, as if the pendant itself breathed. The princess looked at him with wonder, but also with certainty, as though she had expected this. She whispered, "You are the one it has waited for." Daniel tried to speak, but his voice failed. He could only stare at the glowing silver in his hand. The crowd erupted in noise, some cheering, some shouting in anger or disbelief. The queen lifted her hand, calling for silence, but her eyes stayed fixed on Daniel. Whispers spread quickly through the hall. Who was this young man from nowhere? Why had the pendant chosen him? Was he truly meant to protect the kingdom, or was it some mistake? Daniel stood frozen, the pendant glowing in his palm. His journey to the capital had started as nothing more than a dream of adventure. Now, in a single moment, he found himself bound to a destiny far larger than anything he had ever imagined. The days passed quickly in the palace, and Daniel trained as much as his body allowed. Still doubted himself, but each time he touched the pendant, its glow reminded him that he had been chosen. Yet the whispers in the court grew louder. Many nobles said he was nothing more than a villager who did not deserve such honor. Daniel tried to ignore their words, but they weighed heavily on him. One evening, while he trained in the yard, Princess Evelyn came to him with troubling news. Scouts have seen soldiers from the Northern Empire moving near our borders. They're not here for peace. They want the pendant. Daniel tightened his grip on the wooden sword in his hand. Why would they want it? It is only light and warmth. Evelyn shook her head. The pendant is more than that. In the wrong hands, it could turn the balance of power. If the Northern Empire takes it, they will crush our kingdom. Daniel felt a cold fear in his chest. Then I should not hold it. Give it to someone stronger. But Evelyn looked straight into his eyes. The pendant does not shine for anyone else. It chose you. Do you think that is by mistake? Before he could answer, horns echoed through the city walls. Guards rushed to the gates, shouts rising in the night. Daniel followed Evelyn to the high tower, where the queen stood with her generals. From the walls they could see fires burning in the distance. The northern soldiers had already crossed into the kingdom, moving quickly under the cover of darkness. The queen's voice was firm. They come for us, and they come for the relic. She turned her eyes on Daniel. You must prove yourself now. If you are truly chosen, the pendant will guide you. Daniel's heart pounded as he stood among soldiers armed with steel and shields. He had never faced real battle. He wanted to run, but Evelyn touched his arm gently. He will not stand alone. That night, the northern soldiers struck at a village near the capital. Daniel went with a small band of guards, his pendant glowing faintly at his chest. The village was in flames when they arrived. People screamed, running from their homes. The enemy soldiers cut through the streets with sharp blades and burning torches. Daniel froze when he saw them. His hands trembled and his legs refused to move. A soldier swung at him, and for a moment he thought he would die. But then the pendant flared, and light poured from it like a shield. The strike was turned aside, and the enemy stumbled back in shock. Daniel stared at the glowing barrier of light around him, not knowing how he had done it. The guards shouted, rallying to him. With renewed courage, Daniel lifted a sword and struck back. The pendant seemed to guide his arm, his movements sharper than ever before. He blocked, he dodged, he struck, each time feeling the warmth of the pendant grow stronger. The battle raged through the night. Daniel fought not as a trained warrior, but as a man who refused to let the villagers fall. He pulled children from burning homes, shielded mothers with the light of the pendant, and stood firm when others fled. The people began to shout his name, their hope rising at the sight of him. At last the northern soldiers pulled back, unable to face the strange light that defended the villagers. The fires died down, and the screams turned to cries of relief. Daniel stood in the middle of the village square, his chest heaving, the pendant glowing brighter than ever. He had survived his first battle. When they returned to the capital, the queen looked at him with different eyes. She no longer saw only a common boy. She saw a protector. The pendant has revealed its truth, she said in front of her court. Daniel Carter is chosen. Still, not everyone accepted him. Some nobles whispered that he was dangerous, that no commoner should wield such power. But the people outside the palace spoke of him with hope. Stories of the boy with the glowing pendant spread from village to village. That night, Daniel stood on the balcony of his chamber, staring at the stars. Evelyn came to his side, her voice soft but steady. The kingdom believes in you now, and I do too. Daniel touched the pendant, feeling its warmth. He did not feel ready, but he knew his path was no longer his own. He was tied to the fate of the kingdom, and greater trials were waiting. The great hall was still in shock after the pendant's glow. The queen ordered the guards to clear the crowd, but her eyes never left Daniel. Princess Evelyn stood near him, calm but watchful, as if she had expected this moment. Daniel felt the weight of every eye in the room pressing down on him. He wanted to slip away, to hide from the stares, but the pendant still burned softly in his hand. Later that night, he was brought into a quiet chamber inside the palace. The walls were carved with old designs, telling stories of kings and warriors long forgotten. The queen entered with 2 advisors. Her presence was heavy, her voice strong when she spoke. "You are Daniel Carter from the village of Greybrook," she said. "The pendant has chosen you. Do you know what that means?" Daniel shook his head. "I am no one, Your Majesty." "I do not understand why it glowed." The queen studied him for a long time, then looked at the pendant. "This relic was made hundreds of years ago by the first rulers of this land. It has remained silent for generations. It is said to awaken only for the one who can guard the kingdom in its darkest hour. Yet you stand before me, a commoner, with its light in your hands." One of the advisors stepped forward. He was an older man, his eyes sharp. "Your Majesty, this must be a mistake. A simple boy from nowhere cannot be the one. Perhaps it is a trick." The queen raised her hand, silencing him. She turned back to Daniel. "You may not understand now, but the pendant does not make mistakes. Still, the path ahead will test you." When the queen left, Princess Evelyn remained. She looked at Daniel kindly. "Do not be afraid. The pendant chose you for a reason. You must learn what it means." Daniel felt lost. "I am not a warrior. I do not know anything about kingdoms or battles. I only know small things, work that others ignore. How could I guard anyone?" Evelyn smiled faintly. "Sometimes those who do not seek power are the ones most fit to hold it." The days that followed were strange for Daniel. He was given a room in the palace, small but finer than anything he had ever known. Guards watched him wherever he went, not out of loyalty but suspicion. Nobles whispered as he passed, calling him unworthy, mocking his plain clothes and simple ways. He wanted to leave, but whenever he thought of walking away, the pendant glowed faintly, as if urging him to stay. Princess Evelyn began to show him the palace grounds. She told him stories of the pendant, how in old times it had been carried by warriors who stood against enemies stronger than themselves. She told him about the kingdom's rivals beyond the mountains, who always waited for weakness. Daniel listened, but struggled to believe he could matter in such grand tales. At night, when he tried to sleep, the pendant stirred. He saw strange visions when he closed his eyes, saw armies marching in the distance, flames rising from towns, and shadows stretching across the land. He woke each time with sweat on his face, the glow of the pendant still faint on his chest. One morning, Evelyn found him in the training yard, watching soldiers practice with swords and spears. He held the pendant in his hand, unsure of what to do. "You should train," she said gently. "I will fail," Daniel answered. "You will learn," Evelyn replied. She handed him a wooden sword. Every warrior begins with fear. Courage is not the absence of fear, but the choice to stand in spite of it.
Oh.
So Daniel began to train with the palace guards. At first he stumbled, his strikes weak, his steps clumsy. The soldiers laughed at him, but he did not stop. Day after day he returned, his hands blistered, his body aching. Slowly, his strikes grew firmer, his steps more steady. The pendant seemed to guide him, its warmth stronger when he refused to give up. The queen watched from afar, still unsure of him. The court mocked him openly, calling him a farmer who dreamed too high. But Evelyn stood by him, her voice firm each time she defended his place in the palace. One evening, after long hours of training, Daniel sat alone under the palace walls. The pendant pulsed with light, and a voice seemed to echo in his mind, though no one was near. It was not words he understood, but a feeling, a warning, a promise of danger to come. Daniel closed his eyes, his heart heavy. He knew then that his life would never again be simple. The pendant had chosen him, and soon he would have to prove why. Daniel's name spread across the kingdom after the battle in the village. Farmers, traders, and children spoke of the boy who carried a light brighter than fire. But not everyone celebrated him. Inside the palace walls, whispers grew sharper. Some nobles feared him, others hated him. They said he was dangerous, that he would bring ruin if the pendant gave him too much power. The queen watched him closely. She had seen his courage, but her heart was not yet certain. She feared his bond with the princess was growing too strong. She feared his loyalty might be to Evelyn more than to the throne. One evening, Daniel was called before the queen in the royal chamber. The torches burned low, and only a few guards stood nearby. The queen's voice was steady but cold. "Daniel Carter, you have shown bravery, but words of loyalty are easy. Action proves the truth. You must face a trial to test your heart." Daniel bowed his head. "What trial, Your Majesty? You will travel to the borderlands," she said. "Reports say the Northern Empire gathers forces there. You will see for yourself and return with what you learn. If you are false, you will fall. If you are true, you will return stronger." Daniel agreed, though fear weighed on him. He left the palace at dawn with only a horse, a cloak, and the pendant around his neck. The road to the borderlands was long and harsh. The air grew colder each mile, the villages fewer, the land darker. He thought often of Evelyn and her words of faith, but he also heard the mocking voices of the nobles in his mind. On the fourth night, he saw the fires of enemy camps in the distance. Hidden behind rocks, he watched soldiers march. But these soldiers carried strange weapons, unlike any he had seen. Great machines rolled across the earth, covered in steel. They shone with strange light and moved with force that no sword could match. His heart sank as he realized the Northern Empire had built a weapon meant to break the power of the Pendant. Before he could retreat, enemy scouts found him. Daniel ran through the trees, arrows flying past his head. The Pendant glowed and formed shields of light, saving him again and again. Still, he was outnumbered. He fought with all his strength, his sword striking under the glow of the Pendant. The battle was fierce, and though he was wounded in the arm and leg, he escaped into the night, carrying the knowledge of what he had seen. The journey back to the capital nearly killed him. His wounds burned, his strength drained, and hunger clawed at him. At times, he wanted to fall and let the earth take him. But each time he touched the Pendant, it gave him warmth, enough to take another step. After many days, half-starved and bleeding, he reached the palace gates. The guards rushed him inside, and Princess Evelyn was the first to find him. She knelt at his side, tears in her eyes, and held him as he collapsed. He whispered of the great machines of the weapon that could crush the kingdom before sleep took him. When the queen saw him broken and near death, her heart changed. She understood then that he had gone not for power, but for duty. He had faced death and returned not for himself, but for her people. She placed her hand on his shoulder as he lay on the bed. "You are not false," she said. "You are the shield this kingdom needs." For days, Daniel lay in healing, his body weak, but his spirit stronger. Evelyn stayed by his side, speaking to him softly, telling him of the kingdom's faith in him. When he could finally stand again, the queen herself came to him in front of her court. Her voice carried through the hall. "Daniel Carter," she said, "you have passed your trial. You have faced the enemy alone and brought us the truth. You are no longer a stranger here. You're the protector of this kingdom." The nobles fell silent, for they could not argue with her words. The people cheered when they heard the news. Daniel did not feel like a hero, but he knew one thing. The war to come would test him far more than any trial he had faced. The pendant glowed faintly at his chest, a warning and a promise. The Northern Empire wasted no time after Daniel's return. Their armies marched with speed, their great machines rolling across the land like thunder. Villages sent desperate messengers to the capital, warning that the enemy would soon strike at the heart of the kingdom. Fear spread through the city streets, but so did hope. For the people believed the boy with the glowing pendant would stand for them. Inside the palace, the queen gathered her generals. The hall was tense, voices sharp with worry. Some wanted to retreat and guard only the capital. Others demanded a full attack before the enemy grew stronger. At last, the queen raised her hand. "We will not run. We will not wait to be broken. Daniel Carter will lead with the pendant, and we will meet the enemy with courage." The words shocked the court, a commoner to lead them. Many nobles protested, but the queen silenced them. "The pendant has chosen, and I choose with it." Daniel felt the weight of her command settle on him. He was no general, no prince. Yet as he looked at Evelyn, who stood by her mother's side, he saw trust in her eyes. He bowed his head. "I will not fail." The day of battle came quickly. The capital emptied as soldiers, farmers, and villagers joined the queen's army. They marched to the plains outside the city, where the land stretched wide beneath the sky. Across the fields, the Northern army waited, a sea of steel and fire. Their machines glowed with strange power, wheels crushing the earth as they moved forward. Daniel stood at the front line, the pendant shining faintly on his chest. He could feel the fear around him, but he also felt the hope of thousands who looked to him. Evelyn rode beside him, her voice steady as she called for the people to stand firm. The first clash shook the earth. The Northern machines roared forward, their weapons burning through the shields of the queen's soldiers. Daniel raised the pendant high, and light burst from it like the sun. A shield spread wide, covering the front line, and holding back the first strike. Soldiers shouted in wonder, their courage rising. The battle turned fierce. Steel met steel, cries filled the air, and smoke covered the sky. Daniel fought at the center, the pendant guiding his every move. Blades struck at him but were turned aside by light. Arrows rained down but burned away before they reached him. Each step he took forward pushed back the fear in the hearts of those around him. The northern leader rode at the head of his forces, his voice calling for Daniel's death. He drove one of the great machines straight toward him. The ground shook as it came, its power ready to crush all in its path. Daniel felt the pendant pulse, hotter than ever, closed his eyes and stepped forward. The light exploded from him, brighter than fire, brighter than the sun, wrapped around the machine, tearing through its steel, and with a deafening roar, the great weapon broke apart. Soldiers on both sides stopped to stare, blinded by the glow. When the light faded, Daniel still stood. The machine lay in ruins, and silence filled the field for a breathless moment. Then the Queen's army shouted as one, charging with renewed strength. The northern soldiers faltered, their courage broken. The battle raged until the sun fell, but at last the enemy fled, their leader struck down, their machines shattered. The kingdom stood victorious. On the field of victory, the Queen rode to Daniel. Her voice carried across the plain. "Daniel Carter, protector of this realm, you have saved us. The pendant was right to choose you." The soldiers cheered, the people wept with joy, and Evelyn smiled with tears in her eyes. She stepped close and whispered, "You were never ordinary. You were always meant to be this." Daniel looked at the pendant, now glowing softly as if at peace. He did not feel like a hero. He felt like the same boy who once dreamed of something greater. But now he knew his life had meaning, not because of power, but because he had chosen to stand when it mattered most. As the kingdom celebrated, Daniel stood beside Evelyn and the Queen. The stars shone above, and the pendant rested against his chest, warm and alive. The war was over, but his story had only begun.